Good morning. It is Monday, October the 25th, 2021, and welcome to another edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. This morning, Oseye Boyd, the editor of the Indianapolis Recorder, one of the oldest newspapers in the nation and certainly among the oldest in the NNPA, and Dr. Shantella Sherman, founder and publisher of the Acumen magazine, joins us to discuss the traumatization of America's children, America's Black children, by law enforcement, and the changing perspectives about domestic violence. We also got a nice little change this morning. We're going to bring you a segment later on. You don't want to miss it. It's called Minding Other Folks' Business. But first, let's bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. Dr. Chavis, good morning. I see Dr. Chavis, but I don't hear him. All right, well, let's go to the news, and then we will bring on Dr. Chavis when he gets his camera on. Today, after he declared that Democrats, or just days after he declared that Democrats in the Senate may finally need to consider altering the racist filibuster rule, President Joe Biden met Sunday with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Joe Manchin in Delaware, seeking an agreement on the president's social spending plan. Democrats are working to reach consensus on a framework for President Biden's domestic policy agenda, which will require support from Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, both moderate senators who objected to the package's initial 10-year, $3.5 trillion price tag. But reportedly, there's daylight between Senator Manchin and Democratic leaders over the top line number. As the West Virginia senator has said, he supports a $1.5 trillion plan, while the president set a price range for the legislation now at roughly $2 trillion. In addition to trimming the social spending package, Democrats are also hashing out the details of how to pay for it, as the White House faced resistance from Senator Semina over its plan to raise the corporate tax rate and top income rate for the wealthiest Americans. President Biden and Kamala Harris, the vice president's sweeping domestic policy package, was initially set to include his plans for paid family leave, free community college, universal pre-K, and to expand Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing. But at a town hall, the president said Manchin is opposed to Medicare expansion and free community college. The president also said his plan for 12 weeks of paid family leave has been cut to 4 weeks. The president did express optimism that Democrats in both chambers could reach an agreement on a framework for the package, one that would garner support from both Senator Manchin and Senator Semina. Now, let's see if our president is ready to join us. Dr. Chavis, are you with us this morning? This camera is still off, I'm told. So we'll go on with the headlines. The Justice Department announced the launch of the department's new Combating Redlining initiative. Redlining, of course, is the illegal practice in which lenders avoid providing services to individuals living in communities of color because of the race or national origin of the people who live in those communities. The new initiative represents the department's most aggressive and coordinated enforcement effort to address redlining, which is prohibited by the Fair Housing Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And we will continue to follow this story and others at blackpressusa.com and many of our member newspaper publications around the country. Also this morning on this program, we've talked extensively about the strength, courage, and determination of Black women. And we know that they would agree that life for Black children would be better with responsible, involved fathers. And that brings us to this news headline out of Louisiana. After a violent week of fighting in school that saw 23 students arrested in 3 days, Southwood High School parents knew something had to change. Some dads decided to take matters into their own hands. They formed Dads on Duty, a group of about 40 dads who take shifts spending time at the school in Shreveport, Louisiana. They greet students in the morning and help maintain a positive environment for learning rather than fighting. The students say it is working, and the numbers prove it. There hasn't been a single incident on campus since the dads showed up. And though none of the dads have degrees in school counseling or criminal justice, they do have some relevant experience. Michael Lafitte says, we're dads. We decided the best people who can take care of our kids are who? They are us. And this is what they do. And congratulations to those men. Everyone must be proud of these guys. And this is what Black men should be doing. This is what all men should be doing, right? But we hear Black men get such a bad rap, especially when it comes to rearing their kids and being there for their kids. This is an outstanding example of what they mean to the community at large. So again, we see if our president, I'm looking over to my left here, you're right, but my left, to see if our president is ready. He is not yet ready, but you know what? He'll join us. He'll get it together. He always does. A new report shows that Black children made up more than 50% of those who were handled forcibly, though they are only 15% of the U.S. child population. They and other minority kids are often perceived by police as being older than they are. The most common type of force were takedowns, strikes, and muscling, followed by firearms pointed at or used on children. Children also face other tactics, like the use of pepper spray or having police canine dogs sicked on them. Oseye Boyd, the editor of the Indianapolis Recorder, one of the oldest newspapers in the nation and among the oldest in the NNPA, and Dr. Shantella Sherman founded the Acumen team and publishes the Acumen magazine. They're here this morning to talk about this and domestic violence. Let's bring on our two special guests this morning. Good morning, Dr. Sherman and Oseye Boyd.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. So we're going to jump right into it because it's such a hot topic. These are two really hot and sensitive topics. First, let's talk about when law enforcement traumatizes children. There's a new report, as I mentioned, that shows that Black children, although they just make up 15% of the U.S. child population, they comprise more than 50% of kids who are manhandled, shackled, pepper sprayed, taken down, and had guns pointed at them. Dr. Shantella and Oseye, what's going on here?
Well, I can tell you from Acumen's point of view, since we're constantly doing research that tries to deconstruct many of these issues, what we find is that just in American society as a whole, it's still believed that African-American children, non-white children in general, but specifically African-American children, are less human, that they don't qualify as kids in many instances. And so that age of innocence, where you assume the child doesn't know or it's an innocent mistake, is just completely thrown out the window. It's believed almost that Black children come into society out of utero, pathological. And based upon that, I've heard police officers say that they felt intimidated. They felt scared. They felt fearful. And you'll look and see that the child is somewhere between 3 and 5 years old. The handcuffs don't fit the child. So you're asking, what are you afraid of? Where's this intrinsic fear, this innate fear that you have of this child coming from? And in our estimation, again, it's this taught behavior, learned behavior in the society where basically you're saying that African Americans are, again, that subhuman level of creature where you feel that brute force, anger, aggression need to be used to protect you and to protect society.
Oseye, like Dr. Sherman said, 3 years old. I mean, where's the disconnect here? Aren't we all humans?
The disconnect is no, we're not believed to be humans. I mean, it starts from, as Dr. Sherman said, from pretty much as soon as you come out the womb. We know our bodies are not our own. We don't have ownership of our own bodies. We know there's been studies that prove that Black children are seen as older than what they are. They're treated as older than what they are. I believe it was last year, a little 8-year-old girl was arrested. I believe it was Nevada. And the police officer said that he was afraid of her. She was too big. He couldn't handle her. When have you not been able to handle an 8-year-old child? Why must we be violently, our children are being violently thrown to the ground, handcuffed, manhandled, knees and backs. All these things are happening to adults are happening to our children. And I think we often don't understand how prevalent it is. We hear these one-off situations. But it's not a one-off situation.
Yeah,
If law
absolutely.
enforcement is treating us, if they're treating you like this as a child, then obviously they're going to treat you this way as an adult. So
Yeah,
where,
that's
where does it stop? Where does it end? Where does it begin? It begins in childhood with like Dr. Sherman said, they see us as you're seen as automatically bad. Our children
um
can't be kids. I've seen other kids playing and walking around and we can't make mistakes. Our kids
yeah.
can't make mistakes. The mistakes could be lethal.
Well, let's before we continue on, let's now bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publicists Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. Dr. Chavis, it's always a pleasure. And we
Yeah,
don't have voice. You have to unmute there. I'm sorry.
Yes. Good
There you
morning,
go.
Stacy. Yes, sorry for the technical difficulty. And we thank Dr. Sherman and we thank Dr. Boyd for joining the Black Press of America.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ashia, she does a great job with the Indianapolis Recorder out there. We are so proud of that newspaper. Ashia, so with this about these kids, the report that was put out that said Black kids represent at least 50% of those basically attacked by police. And here's the stunning thing, if that number is not stunning enough, but here's the stunning thing about that report. Only 25 of the 18,000 police stations in America gave information for that report. So that number conceivably is a whole lot higher.
We're overrepresented as usual. Per usual, when it comes to disparities, we are overrepresented. And this country has a significant problem with black people. And it's time that we actually own up to it and are honest about it and really work to address it. Our children should not be afraid of the police. There's this idea that the police officers are your friends. That's not the case for our black children. They're afraid. I remember years and years ago when my son was little, I got pulled over by some campus police, and because my son was a taller boy, the police officers came on both sides. There were two cops, both of them. One came on my side, one came on his side. Terrified him. He was 5 years old. And you don't think about those kind of issues traumatize our children. Just as mundane as trying to. And I wasn't speeding. I didn't get a ticket. I didn't do anything. But I had the kind of car I drove. A lot of the younger men had that kind of car. And I also had tinted windows. But, that's something that my son, he just looked and he was just like, what's going on? Why are they stopping you, Mom? How do we erase those kind of memories, from our children's minds? How do you when you see your parent get shot, or when you're actually handcuffed? What happens? In that ProPublica article I referenced, a little girl was arrested throwing up at school because she was terrified. No one told her what was going on, and it was the wrong little girl on top of that.
Right. And so Shantella, Dr. Shan, I want you to answer that question. How do we come back from that?
Well, we need to advocate on behalf of our children constantly. And I'm glad that you started the show off by showing the clip of the fathers going into the schools. What you have to understand is that there was a time, all of us, I think, would remember when you had guidance counselors at the school and you had counselors as opposed to police officers. They're not resource officers. That's not a resource for you. All right. As you're going through growing pains, as you're matriculating through school, you're leaving your parents for the first time, these 3 and 5 year olds. So they're supposed to throw tantrums. You have 15 and 16-year-olds who are supposed to throw tantrums. What you do is you send them to the counselor's office. You don't call the police. So we have to start looking at, again, when we deconstruct things, how do we get to a point where instead of helping the child through all of these hormonal changes and all of the fears and anxieties of being in different places, we decide to call the police as if they've done something actionable and criminal by being human. And so we have to pay attention to that. One of the things that we tell people constantly as a solution, if you are a parent, specifically if you are a single mother, just because you are not with the father of that child doesn't mean that that child is fatherless. When you go to schools, you go together as a team. It is that important because it's almost like a physical stigmata. I'm using eugenic terms because a lot of what we do at Acumen, we springboard from a eugenic point of view. When society sees a woman by herself with kids, all of these stereotypes come into play. And then that child becomes targeted for many of these intrinsic and nasty and racist policies because it's believed that socially this child is pathological, deficient, there's something wrong. Even if you're not together with the fathers, if you're not together with the mothers, when it comes to going to school, you show up as a team. And when you show up as a team, you'll also see research where it shows that when parents come in together, many of their children, even if they're in high risk areas, low performing schools, the children do well. The teachers have a different respect and a different way of handling them. And the children tend to matriculate in a different positive type of way. So we have to do our part on this side, but you also have to get involved with the police. In DC and in a number of other places, they're having these coffee chats. And I think it's important that we show up, even if you think it's hokey and whatever else, you show up so that you can identify the police officers. You need to know who's in your child's school. You need to be able to put a face and a name rather than waiting for specific incidents to happen and then trying to pull things back from a very heated, very angry, very impassioned space. So it makes sense to know who these officers are and have a number you can push real quick if you feel that there's something going on so that you can advocate on behalf of your children.
Yeah, we always grateful to our chair, Karen Carter Richards of the Houston Forward Times, who's watching, Jackie Hampton, who's also a member of the NNPA board and the publisher of the Mississippi Link, is watching this morning. Of course, Bobby Henry, always thankful for our publishers. This is all about the publishers. This is about spotlighting the great work that our newspapers like the Indianapolis Recorder, like the Acumen magazine does. And we will continue to do that and let it be known. Now let's switch over. We're going to switch to the second topic this morning. Both of you, first of all, it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and both of you have done extensive work on this. And Dr. Chavis, you'll be surprised to know that Dr. Shantella, as she put it, she knew one of the more famous domestic violence
perpetrators.
Yes, in history, at least the renowned Ike Turner. So let's talk about domestic violence. Dr. Sherman, you've done some work on that. Obviously, what are you finding today, particularly, of course, in the Black community? Is it prevalent, and is it still taboo to talk about?
It's more taboo now, I think, to talk about it than ever before because there's a level of shame that's attached to it. And it goes across socioeconomic levels. Violence inside the home is a learned behavior. And so, again, in interviewing Ike Turner for an article, I actually became friends with him because I wanted to deconstruct him. I wanted to find out this isn't some person who's just walking around beating people up. It doesn't make sense. No one person is all one thing. So what is driving this person? And so what I started to find out was that he had his own childhood sexual trauma beginning at the age of 4. He had all types of other issues that were going on, in addition to someone finally coming up and finding out that he was bipolar and having him officially diagnosed. So you'll note that by the time he gets to the end of his life, all of that's leveled out. But in talking to him, it was things like he had to learn not to react the way his parents, his grandparents, his uncles and aunts, the people in his community reacted, which in many instances was to smack women, to hit women. And I noted earlier that in history, we're looking at ads from everything from tobacco to Van Heusen ties, where the ads in newspapers say, they depict a man with a woman over his lap spanking her, because only until recent history, and I mean 1970s into the 1980s, was it illegal for a man to strike a woman. In fact, it was good form to have a husband spank his wife. And so there are ads for Kroger where it says spank her if she doesn't get the best deal in the grocery store. And so this was just something that was ongoing. It was learned behavior. And Dear Abby even had a column where men were writing in, and they were talking about the fact that, what do you spank your wife with? And these were men, as the Washington Informer does its viewpoint, is man on the street. They took a picture of these men, and had them tell what they used to spank their wives with on a regular basis. And so these women were getting weekly spankings. That wasn't taboo. That was considered what she needed, because in the same way we think of children in some instances as being less human, Women only
Yeah.
recently were thought to have the mental capacity to have a bank account, to
Mhm,
have the mental
Wow.
mhm,
capacity to to write a check. You
Well,
had to
mhm.
get your husband, your father, someone's signature in order for you to get an apartment.
yeah. And Oseye Boyd, you write in the Indianapolis Recorder, you write, when I think about the way domestic violence is portrayed in movies, it seems like it's something that white women can escape dramatically and something black women like Miss Seeley must endure. For black women, your loved ones know the abuse is occurring, but they don't meddle in your business and you're taught to endure it because you have a man who provides for you. Talk about that. That was some read that you put out there.
Thank you. I think in our community, we often think as long as you have a man, any man, that's better than no man. You know, as long as you have a man who's taking care of you, it doesn't matter what you have to endure. And it's oftentimes given from women who themselves have been abused, or they are alone and struggling and they don't want to see you go through that, not realizing that this is trauma that they are encouraging you to stay in traumatic situations. We often, by the way we speak to each other, encourage each other to stay in traumatic situations, or reinforce that shame and embarrassment of why you don't you leave. You know, we judge women when they say, if someone says, well, he's beating me, or he won't let me do this, or he won't let me write my own, you know, I can't have a debit card, or I can't leave the house, I can't talk on the phone. Girl, why you let him do that to you? I would never let me, you know, that's judging. That's judging, and that's not encouraging them to get out of that situation. That's actually making them say, okay, I won't tell you anything else anymore about what's going on in my life. You know, it comes from a place of we are concerned and we care, but the language we're using is not caring. So that's one of the things I'm working on with myself, is just how do I encourage people to seek help and also not judge them. And if the woman decides to stay, that is her choice to stay, but how do I let her know in a way that's supportive that I'm still here for you no matter what your decision is? You know, so
Yeah,
I think we have to change our whole outlook on the way we view domestic violence in our community.
I want to before I throw it over to you, Dr. Chavis, because I want you to respond to this. Dr. Chavis, Nicole McDaniel says, and it's really interesting. She says, "So sad and true," which is why people need to be careful when they start talking about the non-existent good old days, quote unquote, good old days. It's just like saying, "Make America great again." Dr. Chavis, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Nicole. And first, I want to thank again Dr. Sherman and Sister Boyd for bringing this issue and for the good work that they continue to do in Washington and in Indianapolis. Look, this is about how we see ourselves as a people and how we see the world in which we live in.
Mhm.
I think Dr. Sherman was right. Listen, at early age, no one is born with self-hatred. No one is born with the proclivity to do violence to someone that they're supposed to love or someone that they're supposed to care about. And I think I agree with Sister Boyd. There's a difference between judging somebody and helping somebody. The people who do domestic violence need help, and the people who are the on the other end who are the victims of the domestic violence also need help. And that's why, Stacy, I'm glad that the Black press. I'm so proud that the Black press doesn't avoid this issue. That's our role. We have to raise the issues, sometimes the uncomfortable issues. Sometimes the unspeakable truth needs to be spoken. When we say we speak truth to power, we do, but we also have to speak truth to ourselves, you know. And systemic racism, when to me, these two issues, these reports now that the traumatization of our children based on police actions, and now the prevalence of domestic violence, particularly during COVID, where there's been an increase in domestic violence because people closer proximity to one another, and they're taking out their anxieties, their fears, their anger, and because that may have been mistreated and later in life, it comes early in life, it comes out in life today. So I think it's a serious matter, and I think that we need to discuss it. We need to write about it. We need to discuss it. But the very place that needs to be discussed first is in the home, is in the family, because that's where domestic violence has its crucible. That's where it grows. And if it's not checked, it can come to something very, very serious, very, very dangerous, very, very self-destructive.
Yeah, we need to continue this conversation. It's just unfortunate that we are running out of time. It is such a privilege to have both Oseye Boyd of the Indianapolis Recorder and Dr. Shantella Sherman, who's not just a journalist, not just a publisher, but a historian. She comes from so many different perspectives, and we has so many different perspectives on some things that are so important to all of us. We're gonna have you guys got to come back.
I was going to say, Stacy, we're going to bring them back. This is just the beginning of the discussion.
Yeah, we will be in touch with both of you after this program. Hang out after the program so we can say goodbye and we can set something up for maybe even later this week, because this is such an important conversation. But we want to end today. We're going to try and lift it up just a little bit, lighten it up just a little bit. We're going to end today with a new segment. And you guys, we got a few minutes so you can weigh in on this. But this is called Minding Other Folks' Business. People are always in our business. So you know what? They say stay out of folks' business, but folks, they always in ours. So here we are, and let it be known, we're going to call out some things that ain't too cool. We're going to do it by minding other folks' business. And today, I'm all up in the beeswax of Paul McCartney. You know why? Because that former Beatle, he had the nerve, the audacity to call out the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger. Why? That's not my business, but I'll talk about it. When asked about a comparison between the two supergroups, Sir Paul says, and I quote, "I'm not sure I should say it, but they are a blues cover band. That's sort of what the Stones are. I think our net was cast a bit wider than theirs." Wait. He called them a cover band. Now, you know you shouldn't have said that, Paul. You should have kept that to yourself because you're dead wrong on several fronts. First, the Rolling Stones are a transcendent band. Ask someone over the age of 60 about the Rolling Stones or someone 30 years old, and you'll likely get the same response. An interest in the band and a show of respect for their longevity. The Beatles came roaring into the United States from Great Britain in the 1960s, entitled, and they brought their lollipop sound with them. And nothing was sophisticated about the Beatles. Sure, fans can talk about Sgt. Pepper and Let It Be, but the only Beatles song I can listen to personally is Come Together, and that is only when Aerosmith or Michael Jackson sings it. So, okay, Paul, you call the Stones a cover band? Well, it seems to me that the best version of the Beatles songs were those covered by other artists. But that's just me minding other folks' business. Y'all can jump in. Shantella?
I'm with you. You can't knock the Stones. Come on.
I mean, come on. The greatest rock and roll band there is, right? That's like Vanilla Ice.
Time, but Rolling Stones, come on.
That's like Vanilla Ice calling Jay-Z a cover, right? Come on. Give me a break.
That's hate.
That's all, right? Shit, that's hate, right? Why are you hating? Paul McCartney waited all these years. And now, he want to hate on Mick and the Rolling Stones. Come on, I can't get no satisfaction from that.
Well, Stacy, I see it as a confession. It's a confession that rock and roll grew out of the Black experience.
There you go.
There it is. Yeah, Dr. Chavez, don't stop there.
I'm just saying that, listen, white supremacy didn't start in America.
No. Hey, let it be known.
There you go. We couldn't have said it better ourselves, Dr. Shantella. I don't want to get Dr. Chavez started because we're out of time, but we're going to do that every morning, though. We're going to mind some folks' business because they all up in our business, y'all. So thanks for watching. We're going to bring Dr. Shantella back. We're going to bring Oseye Boyd from the Indianapolis Recorder back. This is a conversation, though, on a serious note, that domestic violence and what police are doing to our children. This is too serious of a topic to just let it sit after one conversation, especially with the insight that they bring. So join us tomorrow. Join us the rest of the week. We will see you then. Thanks for watching.